He walked into the restaurant without imagining that his life was about to change forever. He was used to being served, ignoring faces and stories. But when he looked to the side, his eyes locked onto a boy with the same eyes, the same hair, the same features he sees in the mirror every day. The millionaire froze as the boy approached, looked him directly in the eye, and asked, "Daddy?" And what happened next would change his destiny forever. The 52nd floor of Hatfield Tower offered a panoramic view of Manhattan that most would kill for. Andrew Hatfield barely noticed it anymore. From behind his glass desk, New York was just another asset, another calculation in his empire of luxury hotels spanning 3 continents. The Zurich acquisition papers need your signature. Mr. Hatfield, his assistant, Meredith, placed a leather portfolio on his desk. Andrew didn't look up from his screen. "Leave it. I'll review it before the board meeting." Meredith hesitated. After 5 years, she still hadn't grown comfortable with his Arctic demeanor. "Also, your mother called." "Twice." A muscle twitched in Andrew's jaw. "Tell her I'm in Tokyo." "But, sir, she knows you're—" "Just tell her." His tone left no room for argument. When the door closed, Andrew finally took his eyes off the screen and gazed at his reflection in the window. Sharp features, perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, and eyes that financial journalists often described as calculating. At 42, Andrew Hatfield was at the peak of his power, overseeing the largest luxury hotel chain in the United States. Forbes had recently valued his net worth at just under $3 billion. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Hatfield, it's 6:45, your standing reservation." "I know what time it is," he said, already reaching for his coat. Every Friday for the past 12 years, Andrew had dinner at the Silver Crown, a tradition he maintained with religious dedication, not because the food was exceptional, though it was, but because tradition was the one thing Sidney Hatfield had drilled into him since childhood. "Tradition is what separates the Hatfields from new money," his mother would say, her voice crisp as her Chanel suits. "Your father understood that." His father, Dwayne Hatfield, whose portrait hung in the company's boardroom, was more myth than memory to Andrew. He died when Andrew was just 8, leaving behind a modest hotel chain and a wife determined to transform it into an empire. Andrew's driver held the door as he exited the building. "The Silver Crown, sir." "Yes, James." The only words they'd exchange on the 15-minute drive. 3 blocks away, Dana Mason wiped sweat from her brow as she tasted the sauce for tonight's special. 3 years as head chef at the Silver Crown, and still her heart raced every Friday when she knew he would walk through those doors. "Dana, you're going to burn a hole in that pot." Gregory, the maitre d', said softly beside her. His eyes held understanding. He was one of the few who knew. "I'm fine." Her voice was steady, belying the storm beneath. "Just make sure everything's perfect for table 7. Gregory squeezed her shoulder. "He never even looks at the staff, you know that." "I know." Dana tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "But I see him every damn week, on the other side of the kitchen." 9-year-old Gregory Mason sat at the small staff table, head bent over his sketchbook, pencil moving with precision unusual for his age. He had his mother's olive skin, but something else, something in the set of his jaw, the shape of his eyes, that Dana tried not to see when she looked at him. "How's the drawing coming along, honey?" she asked, momentarily forgetting the sauce. Gregory looked up, his amber eyes serious. "I'm designing a hotel, Mom. One that looks like a tree, with rooms in the branches." The knot in Dana's chest tightened. The boy had never met his father, yet somehow the Hatfield blood showed through. Architecture, design, ambition, all flowing in his veins alongside the faulty heart genetics that kept Dana awake at night. "That's creative, baby. Maybe you'll be an architect someday, or a hotel guy, like on TV. So innocent, so unaware." The kitchen doors swung open as Gregory the maitre d' returned. "He's here," he whispered. "Same table, same order. Scotch, medium rare steak, no conversation." Dana nodded, turning back to her station. "Let's get through another Friday." Outside in the dining room, Andrew slid into the familiar leather booth, table 7. The same table where his father had closed the deal on his first major hotel acquisition. Legend had it that old Dwayne had sealed a handshake agreement worth millions right there, creating the foundation of what would become the Hatfield Empire. A waiter approached. "Good evening, Mr. Hatfield," the usual. Andrew didn't bother responding, just nodded once. The staff knew his routine. Macallan 18. Filet mignon. Medium rare. Seasonal vegetables. No dessert. He opened his phone, scrolling through emails even as the scotch arrived. In a sleek black limousine parked across the street, Sydney Hatfield watched the restaurant entrance through tinted windows. At 68, she remained a formidable figure, her silver hair cut in a severe bob that framed her still beautiful face. The driver handed her a tablet displaying the latest report from her private investigator. "So the boy visits the restaurant regularly," Sydney mused, scrolling through images of a dark-haired child. "The resemblance is unmistakable." The driver remained silent, knowing better than to comment. Sydney's perfectly manicured nail tapped against the screen. "Inform Dr. Cooper that I'll need those medical records by Monday." Back in the restaurant, Gregory, the maitre d', approached Andrew's table, something he never did, a breach of protocol that would normally cost a staff member their job. "Mr. Hatfield," he said, his voice slightly trembling. "We have a new children's menu today. I thought perhaps you might want to try it." Andrew looked up, irritation clear in his eyes. "Why would I?" The words died in his throat as his gaze shifted past the maitre d' to a nearby table. A boy sat alone, head bent over what appeared to be a drawing pad. Something about the child's profile sent a jolt of recognition through Andrew. The slightly upturned nose, the particular arch of the eyebrows that Andrew saw every morning in his mirror. "What is this?" Andrew's voice was dangerously quiet before the maitre d' could answer. The boy looked up. Their eyes met across the dining room. The same amber shade, the same intensity, as if pulled by some unseen force. The child stood, dropping his pencil. He walked toward Andrew's table with purpose that defied his small frame. Andrew found himself unable to move, frozen as the boy stopped just inches from his table. "Are you my daddy?" The child's voice was clear, cutting through the ambient restaurant noise like a bell. "Mom has a picture of you in her memory box." The dining room fell silent. From the kitchen doorway, Dana emerged, her face drained of color, 9 years older than when Andrew had last seen her, but with the same determined set to her jaw that had once captivated him. "Gregory, come here right now," she called, their gazes locked across the restaurant. Employee and employer, former lover and the woman he'd discarded, mother and father of a child he never knew existed. The ice in Andrew Hatfield's veins, for the first time in decades, began to crack. "Gregory, I said come here." Dana's voice sliced through the silence, her chef's coat stark white against the restaurant's muted tones. The boy hesitated, looking between his mother and Andrew, confusion clouding his amber eyes. Andrew stood abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood. "My office now." He didn't specify who the command was for. Dana grabbed Gregory's hand, pulling him protectively to her side. "We're not going anywhere with you. Then perhaps you'd prefer to have this conversation here." Andrew's gaze swept the dining room, where patrons pretended not to stare. In front of everyone, Dana's jaw tightened. She turned to the maitre d'. "Gregory, watch my son for 20 minutes. Don't let him out of your sight." "Of course, Dana." The maitre d' placed a gentle hand on young Gregory's shoulder. "Mom," fear crept into the boy's voice. Dana knelt, meeting her son's eyes. "It's okay, sweetie. Adult talk. I'll be right back." She kissed his forehead, inhaling the scent of his shampoo, a grounding ritual before facing the storm. Andrew was already striding toward the restaurant's back exit, phone pressed to his ear. "Have the car brought around." "Now?" The silver Bentley purred to a stop in the alley as they emerged. James opened the door without comment, the consummate professional ignoring the tension crackling between his boss and the woman in chef's whites. "Get in," Andrew ordered. "I'm not getting into your car." Andrew's expression hardened. "Fine. We'll talk here, where your coworkers can hear every word about how you've kept my son." "My son," Dana corrected, but slid into the vehicle, situating herself as far from Andrew as the back seat allowed, the privacy partition raised silently, leaving them in cushioned isolation. "How much?" Andrew asked without preamble. Dana stared at him. "Excuse me. How much do you want?" He pulled out his phone. "I can transfer a reasonable amount right now." More can be arranged with proper paperwork. The slap echoed in the confined space, Dana's palm connecting with Andrew's cheek with such force his head snapped sideways. 9 years, she hissed. 9 years I've raised our son alone, worked 60-hour weeks climbing from waitress to chef, paid for doctor visits and school supplies and everything else while you lived in your tower. And your first question is how much I want. Andrew touched his cheek, eyes narrowing. If not money, then what? Recognition. A public scandal. You always were smarter than most, Dana. Let's be practical. Practical. Dana's laugh was hollow. There's nothing practical about Gregory's question tonight. He found an old photo while going through my things. I never told him who you were. Never planned to, but he's smart. Too smart sometimes. And he's been asking questions. So you orchestrated this little scene. I didn't orchestrate anything. I would have been perfectly happy if you'd gone your whole life without knowing about him. Her voice broke slightly. He's been curious about his father. That's normal. But I never expected him to approach you like that. Andrew studied her. 9 years had matured Dana Mason's beauty. Her features sharper, more defined, the spark in her eyes tempered by something harder. He found himself remembering things he'd long buried. Her laugh, the freckles across her shoulders, the way she'd challenge him when everyone else simply nodded. You never told me, he said finally. I tried to. Dana's voice was flat. The day your manager fired me, I came to tell you I was pregnant. You wouldn't even see me. Had security escort me out. Said I was trying to trap you, remember that? But 9 years earlier, Mr. Hatfield doesn't have time for walk-ins, the receptionist said without looking up. I'm not a walk-in. I'm Dana Mason. I worked, at the Silver Crown. He'll want to see me. Dana's hand instinctively covered her still flat stomach. I'm sorry, but without an appointment. Call him, please. It's important. Something in her tone made the receptionist hesitate, then pick up the phone. 5 minutes later, 2 security guards appeared. Miss, we need you to leave the premises. I just need 5 minutes with Andrew. Mr. Hatfield says you're attempting to create a false association for financial gain. If you persist, he'll be forced to take legal action. The words hit harder than the guard's firm grip on her arms. As they escorted her to the elevator, Dana glimpsed Andrew watching from his office doorway, his expression as cold as the steel and glass surrounding him. I hope you rot in your tower, Andrew Hatfield, she'd called out, voice breaking. You and your money and your empty life. Yet in the Bentley, Andrew's expression revealed nothing. A convenient story. You think I'd make up having your child for what? Money. Dana's eyes flashed. I made sure Gregory never needed anything from you. I worked my way up from waitress to line cook to sous chef to head chef. I did that while raising your son alone. If he's my son. Look at him. You saw it yourself. He has your eyes, your eyebrows, even that same look of concentration when he's focusing. Everyone who knows you would see it instantly. Outside the car window, New York's lights blurred as light rain began to fall. In the distance, Hatfield Tower pierced the skyline, its top floors illuminated against the night. I'll require a DNA test, Andrew said finally. You think I came here asking for your acknowledgement, for your money? Dana shook her head. I've spent 9 years making sure Gregory never had to depend on you for anything. Then why the dramatic reveal tonight? Dana's expression changed, vulnerability briefly replacing anger. I told you. It wasn't planned. Gregory found that picture. She trailed off, suddenly looking exhausted. I need to get back to my son. My shift isn't over. James will drive you home when you're ready. I'll have my lawyer contact you tomorrow about the DNA test. Don't bother. We don't need anything from you. Dana reached for the door handle. I have rights, Andrew said sharply. Dana turned, her expression incredulous. Rights? You had the right to see me 9 years ago when I tried to tell you. You had the right to ask questions before having me thrown out by security. Those rights expired. She opened the door. Stay away from my son, Andrew. As the door slammed, Andrew's phone buzzed with a text from Sydney. Call me immediately. We need to discuss what happened at the restaurant. His blood ran cold. Of course she knew. Sydney Hatfield always knew everything. Inside the restaurant, Dana returned to find Gregory at the staff table, his drawing abandoned. Is that man really my dad? He asked, eyes wide and serious. Dana brushed back his dark hair, heart breaking at the hope in his eyes. It's complicated, sweetie. He looked sad, Gregory observed, and scared. Dana almost laughed at her son's perception. Andrew Hatfield, billionaire, afraid. But looking at Gregory, she saw the truth. Beneath the power and money, Andrew was just a man confronted with a truth he couldn't control. Across town, Sydney Hatfield reviewed the photographs her investigator had taken through the restaurant window. The resemblance between her son and the boy was undeniable. The same Hatfield features her late husband had passed to Andrew. Arrange for the DNA sample to be collected, she instructed her head of security. Discreetly. And get me everything on Dana Mason and her son. Her thin lips curved into a smile that never reached her eyes. It seems we may have found a spare heir, should Andrew continue to defy me on the succession planning. 3 days later, an unmarked envelope arrived at Andrew's penthouse. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 words that shattered his carefully controlled world. Paternity, 99.8% confirmed. Andrew stared at the DNA results, the paper trembling slightly in his grip. He'd ordered the test as a formality, expecting, perhaps hoping, it would clear his name. Instead, it confirmed what he'd known the moment he'd looked into the boy's eyes. 99.8%, he murmured, tossing the paper onto his desk. His phone rang, displaying his mother's name. He silenced it, as he had for the past 3 days. Sydney had left a dozen messages, each more imperious than the last, demanding to know about the boy at the restaurant. Andrew poured himself a scotch, something he rarely did before noon. The liquor burned his throat, but did nothing to ease the tightness in his chest. A son. He had a son he'd never known about. No, that wasn't quite right. He'd had a chance to know, and he'd rejected it without a second thought. His private line rang, displaying a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it, but something, instinct perhaps, made him answer. Hatfield. Andrew, it's Brandon Cooper. Andrew frowned. He hadn't spoken to his former college roommate in years. Brandon, how did you get this number? That's not important right now. Brandon's voice was tight, with an urgency that cut through Andrew's confusion. I need you to come to Mount Sinai Hospital, right away. I'm not ill. It's not about you. It's about Gregory Mason. Andrew felt his body go cold. How do you... I'm his cardiologist, Andrew. I didn't make the connection until yesterday when I saw Dana in the hallway. It's serious. You need to be here. 20 minutes later, Andrew strode through the pediatric cardiac unit, ignoring the startled glances of nurses who recognized his face from business magazines. Brandon was waiting outside a room, his white coat rumpled as if he'd been wearing it for days. Thank you for coming, Brandon said, extending his hand. Andrew ignored it. What's going on? Why is He faltered on the word. Why is Gregory here? Brandon glanced around, then motioned Andrew to follow him into a small consultation room. He closed the door before speaking. Gregory has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Seeing Andrew's blank look, he continued, It's a condition where the heart muscle becomes abnormally thick, making it harder for the heart to pump blood. Is it treatable? Yes and no. Brandon pulled up a file on his tablet. The condition is genetic, Andrew. It's the same thing your father had. Andrew blinked, memory flashing to his father collapsing at a board meeting when Andrew was 8. The hushed conversations, his mother's teary explanation. Daddy's heart was too big for his body. How bad is it? Andrew asked, his voice distant to his own ears. In Gregory's case, severe. We discovered it during a routine physical for school sports 6 months ago. He's been on medication, but his latest tests show the condition is progressing faster than we'd hoped. Brandon swiped to another screen. There's a new procedure, a combination of targeted gene therapy and stem cell regeneration, that's showing incredible promise. But it's still experimental, and it's only available at a clinic in Zurich. Cost isn't an issue. I know, Brandon said quietly, but Dana has refused outside financial help. She's been trying to get Gregory into a clinical trial that would cover the expenses. That's absurd if there's a treatment available. She's proud. Andrew, and she doesn't trust you for obvious reasons. Andrew's jaw tightened. I want to see him. He's sleeping now. The medications make him drowsy. Brandon hesitated. There's something else you should know. Andrew braced himself. The condition. It's hereditary. There's a 50% chance of passing it to offspring. Your father had it. Now Gregory, and me. Andrew finished. Potentially, yes. Though you might carry it in a dormant form, we should run tests. Andrew waved away the suggestion, moving toward the door. What room is he in? Brandon led him down the hall to a room with an observation window. Through the glass, Andrew saw Gregory asleep in a hospital bed that seemed too large for his small frame. Monitors beeped steadily beside him. Dana sat in a chair at his bedside, her head resting on the edge of the mattress, one hand still holding her son's. How long has she been here? Andrew asked. Since they admitted him yesterday, she hasn't left his side. Andrew studied the tableau. The sleeping mother and child, so vulnerable yet somehow stronger than anything in his corporate world. How much time does he have without the treatment? Brandon hesitated. If his condition continues to progress at this rate, maybe a year, less if there are complications. Andrew's hand pressed against the glass, as if trying to reach through it. And with the treatment, it could reverse the damage, potentially allow for normal development, but it needs to happen soon, before the heart muscle deteriorates further. A nurse approached Dana, gently waking her. Andrew watched as Dana straightened, instantly alert, checking Gregory's face before responding to whatever the nurse was saying. Even exhausted, she moved with purpose, checking his IV, adjusting his blanket, brushing hair from his forehead with a tenderness that made Andrew's chest ache with an unfamiliar emotion. Does she know I'm here? Not yet. I thought it better if... The door to Gregory's room opened, and Dana stepped out. She froze when she saw Andrew, fatigue instantly replaced by wariness. What are you doing here? Dr. Cooper called me. Her eyes flashed to Brandon, who at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. And you had no right. Dana, Brandon began. As Gregory's father, he has a right to... 9 years, Brandon. 9 years of silence give him no rights. She turned back to Andrew. If you're here out of curiosity, you've seen him, now leave. I'm here because he's my son. DNA doesn't make you a father. No. But it means I have a responsibility to ensure he gets the best care possible. Dana's laugh was bitter. Now you talk about responsibility. Where was this concern a decade ago? I didn't know. Because you chose not to know. Her voice rose before she caught herself, glancing anxiously at Gregory's room. She lowered her voice. You made your choice very clear when you had security throw me out of your building. Andrew had faced hostile negotiations, weathered market crashes, stared down billionaire rivals, but nothing had prepared him for the raw hurt in Dana's eyes. The treatment in Zurich, he said finally. I want to pay for it. Dana's expression hardened. We don't need your money. This isn't about what you need. It's about what Gregory needs. I've already applied for the clinical trial. There's a spot opening next month. And if he doesn't get in, are you willing to gamble with his life because you're too proud to accept my help? The question landed like a slap. Dana's eyes brightened with unshed tears. You don't get to waltz in here and act like you care, she said, voice breaking. Gregory has been my entire world for 9 years. Every fever, every nightmare, every school project. I was there, alone. You have no idea what that's like. Before Andrew could respond, a soft voice came from the doorway behind Dana. Mom, who are you talking to? Dana turned quickly, wiping her eyes. No one, sweetie, just the doctor. But Gregory was looking past her, directly at Andrew. Recognition dawned in his eyes. You're the man from the restaurant, my dad. The simple statement hung in the air between them. Not a question this time. Gregory, honey, you should be resting, Dana said, moving to block his view of Andrew. Is he here because of my heart? Gregory asked, too perceptive for his 9 years. Andrew stepped forward, ignoring Dana's warning glare. Yes, he said, meeting the boy's eyes directly. I'm here because I want to help make you better. Gregory studied him with an intensity that was unsettling, like looking into a mirror that reflected his younger self. Mom says my heart is special, Gregory said, that some hearts work differently, but it doesn't mean they're broken. Something shifted in Andrew's chest, a sensation he couldn't name. Your mom is very wise, he managed to say. From the end of the hall, the elevator doors opened. Sydney Hatfield emerged, her silver hair immaculate, her Chanel suit crisp despite the early hour. Her gaze locked on the tableau before her, Andrew, Dana, and the small boy in the doorway. A slow, calculating smile spread across her face as she approached. "Well," she said, her voice carrying down the corridor, "isn't this a touching family reunion? Mother?" Andrew's voice chilled several degrees. "What are you doing here?" Sydney Hatfield moved toward them with measured steps, her Louboutins clicking against the hospital floor like a metronome. "When my only son ignores my calls for days, I become concerned." Her gaze shifted to Gregory, who had shrunk back against Dana. "Especially when I hear he's been visiting hospitals." Dana instinctively placed herself between Sydney and her son. "Gregory, go back to bed, please." "But Mom, now." "Honey," the boy hesitated, looking between the adults with the wary intelligence of a child who has learned to read a room. Reluctantly, he retreated into his hospital room. Sydney's cold smile never wavered. "He has the Hatfield eyes. Unmistakable." "Mrs. Hatfield," Brandon interjected, "this is a hospital. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private." "Dr. Cooper." Sydney nodded, unsurprised by his presence. "Still practicing, I see. How fortunate." Something passed between them, a current of unspoken history that made Brandon stiffen. "There's a consultation room down the hall," he said, avoiding her gaze. "I'm not leaving Gregory," Dana stated flatly. "I'll stay with him," Brandon offered. "These medications can cause side effects we should monitor." After a moment's hesitation, Dana nodded. With visible reluctance, she followed Andrew and Sydney to the small room where Andrew and Brandon had spoken earlier. The door had barely closed when Sydney turned to Dana, her expression sharpening. "So, you're the waitress, I must say. Chef is quite a step up. Ambitious." "Mother," Andrew warned. Dana crossed her arms. "I earned every promotion through hard work and talent, Mrs. Hatfield. Something your son might not understand." Sydney's laugh was like ice cracking. "My dear, my son was reading quarterly reports while his classmates were still struggling with Dr. Seuss. The Hatfield work ethic is legendary." "Enough," Andrew cut in. "Dana, I apologize for my mother's unexpected visit, Mother. This is neither the time nor place for whatever game you're playing." Sydney's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "Game? My grandson is in the hospital with a serious heart condition. The same condition that took your father." Her voice softened to a dangerous purr. "I'm simply here to ensure he receives the care he deserves." Dana's eyes narrowed. "How did you know about his condition?" "I make it my business to know everything that affects the Hatfield family." Sydney reached into her designer handbag and extracted a slim folder, including the details of an experimental treatment in Zurich that could save his life. "Dr. Cooper already told us about the treatment," Andrew said. "Yes, but did he mention the wait list is over 18 months? Or that the clinic only accepts patients through their exclusive referral network?" Sydney slid the folder across the table. "Fortunately, I sit on the board of the American Heart Association with Dr. Elise Weber, who happens to be the sister-in-law of the clinic's director." Dana didn't touch the folder. "What do you want?" Sydney looked genuinely surprised. "Want? I want to help my grandson. You didn't even know he existed until a few days ago." "And whose fault is that?" Sydney turned to Andrew. "If you told me about the boy years ago." "I didn't know," Andrew ground out. Sydney's gaze slid back to Dana. "Yes, that's the story, isn't it? Though I find it hard to believe a woman as resourceful as you wouldn't have tried to inform the father of her child." Dana's hands clenched. "I did try. Your son refused to see me, accused me of trying to trap him, and had me thrown out of his building. And you gave up after one attempt, with a Hatfield heir at stake." Sydney clicked her tongue. "Hardly the fighting spirit I'd expect from a single mother." Andrew slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough. My son is lying in a hospital bed with a life-threatening condition. Your games and accusations won't help him." Both women stared at him, Dana with surprise, Sydney with calculated interest. "My son," Sydney repeated softly. "How quickly you've accepted fatherhood." Andrew ignored her, turning to Dana. "The treatment in Zurich, is it Gregory's best chance?" Dana hesitated, conflict clear in her eyes. "According to Brandon, yes. But the clinical trial in Boston has a 5% acceptance rate and wouldn't begin for another 6 months," Sydney interjected. "The Zurich protocol has shown an 87% success rate in cases similar to Gregory's." "How would you even know that?" Dana demanded. Sydney smiled thinly. "As I said, I make it my business to know." Dana looked between mother and son. the same aristocratic features set in different expressions. Sydney's calculating, Andrew's conflicted. For 9 years, she'd kept Gregory safe from the Hatfield world of power plays and manipulation. Now that world was closing in, offering salvation at an unknown price. "I need to check on my son," she said finally. Standing, Andrew rose as well. "I'll come with you." "Actually," Sydney interrupted, "I'd like a private word with Ms. Mason first." Seeing Andrew's expression, she added, "Just a brief grandmother-to-mother chat. We'll join you shortly." "It's fine," Dana said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Go see Gregory. He probably has questions." After Andrew left, Sydney's demeanor changed, the social veneer dropping away to reveal the steel beneath. "Let's be direct, Miss Mason. You need money for your son's treatment. I can provide it, along with the connections to ensure he receives the best care possible." "In exchange for what?" "Your cooperation." Sydney leaned forward. "The boy is a Hatfield. He deserves the opportunities that come with the name. The best schools, the right connections, a place in the family business. You want custody?" Dana said flatly. "Shared custody would be a reasonable arrangement. You could still see him, of course, perhaps on weekends and holidays." Dana's laugh was hollow. "You can't be serious. Perfectly serious, you must have wondered how you'd manage Gregory's care while working 60-hour weeks as a chef. And what about his education? Private schools that could nurture his talents cost upwards of $50,000 a year." Sydney's voice was reasonable, as if discussing a business merger. "I'm offering your son a future, Miss Mason. All I ask is that you allow him to be part of his rightful family." "Gregory's rightful family is with me, is it?" "When you can't provide the treatment he needs, the opportunities he deserves." Sydney shook her head. "Consider my offer carefully. $5 million, placed in a trust for Gregory's care and education. In return, he lives primarily with the Hatfields, where he can be properly integrated into his father's world." "Get out," Dana whispered. Sydney stood, smoothing her skirt. "Think about it. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. In the meantime, I'll arrange for Gregory's transfer to Zurich. We can discuss the details of our arrangement once he's stable." "There will be no arrangement. Gregory stays with me." "We'll see." Sydney moved to the door, then paused. "You know, Ms. Mason, I was once like you, a young woman from a modest background who caught the eye of a Hatfield man. The difference is, I understood what was required to survive in this world." Her smile was almost pitying. "Ask yourself what matters more, your pride or your son's life?" Down the hall, Andrew stood awkwardly by Gregory's bed, unsure what to do with his hands, his words, or the unfamiliar emotions crowding his chest. Gregory studied him with open curiosity. "You're really tall." The simple observation startled a laugh from Andrew. "I suppose I am. Mom says I'll be tall too. Eventually, that I'm just saving up my height for a growth spurt." Andrew noticed the boy's sketch pad on the bedside table. "You like to draw?" Gregory nodded, brightening. "I was designing a hotel shaped like a tree when I saw you at the restaurant." He hesitated. "Do you want to see?" Something warm and unexpected unfurled in Andrew's chest as he pulled a chair closer to the bed. "I'd like that very much." Gregory carefully opened the sketch pad, revealing surprisingly detailed drawings for a 9-year-old. Structures with sweeping lines and imaginative features that somehow managed to look both whimsical and architecturally sound. "This one has rooms in the branches," Gregory explained, pointing to his tree hotel. "And the lobby is down here in the trunk, with glass elevators that look like they're growing up through the tree. It's remarkable," Andrew said honestly. "You have a good eye for design." Gregory beamed at the praise, then turned serious. "Mom says you build hotels too." "I do." "Are any of them shaped like trees?" "No," Andrew admitted. "Mine are much more boring, all straight lines and glass." Gregory considered this. "Maybe they don't have to be boring. Maybe you're right." Andrew found himself smiling, a genuine smile that felt foreign on his face. Gregory flipped to another page, explaining each design with the earnest enthusiasm of childhood. As Andrew listened, he was struck by how easily the boy shared his dreams, how unguarded his expression, so different from the careful masks Andrew had learned to wear at the same age. "Why did you never come see me before?" Gregory asked suddenly, the question catching Andrew off guard in the corporate world. Andrew was known for his quick thinking. his ability to spin any situation to his advantage, but faced with his son's direct question, all his practiced responses failed him. "I didn't know about you," he said finally, choosing a simple truth. "If I had known, things would have been different." Gregory studied him, those familiar amber eyes searching for something. "Mom says sometimes people make mistakes because they're scared, not because they're bad." The words hit Andrew with unexpected force. Wisdom from the mouth of a child that cut through decades of emotional insulation. "Your mom is very wise," he managed to say, past the tightness in his throat. Gregory nodded solemnly. "She's the best person in the whole world." His expression turned anxious. "She works really hard to take care of me. Sometimes too hard, I think, especially since I got sick." Andrew felt something protective stir within him, an instinct he hadn't known he possessed. "You don't need to worry about that anymore. I'm going to help take care of you now. Promise." Gregory held out his small pinky finger. Andrew stared at it for a moment, this simple childhood gesture so foreign to his experience. Slowly, he extended his own hand, wrapping his pinky around his son's. "Promise." 3 days after his first hospital visit, Andrew returned to his penthouse well past midnight. The negotiations for the Dubai property had dragged on, but his mind hadn't been on the deal. Every thought circled back to Gregory, his smile, his drawings, the way his small hand had felt wrapping around Andrew's finger in that pinky promise. Andrew loosened his tie and poured himself a scotch, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. He'd visited the hospital twice more, each time finding Dana exhausted but vigilant at Gregory's side. Their interactions remained tense, but something had shifted. A fragile truce formed around their shared concern for their son. Sydney, thankfully, had made herself scarce after that first confrontation, though Andrew had no illusions that she'd back down. His mother never retreated. She merely regrouped. His phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. "Test results back. Gregory stable enough for travel. Zurich clinic confirmed admission for Monday if we move quickly." Andrew typed back, "Make the arrangements. I'll cover everything." Brandon's response came quickly. "Dana still reluctant. Says she can't leave her job for weeks." Andrew frowned. Dana had been clear she wouldn't accept his money for herself, but surely Gregory's treatment took precedence over pride. He made a mental note to speak with her tomorrow. Restless, Andrew wandered through his spacious penthouse. Despite the designer furniture and museum-quality art, the place had always felt more like a hotel suite than a home, a temporary stopping place between meetings and flights. In his home office, Andrew's gaze landed on an old steamer trunk pushed against the wall. It had been his father's, one of the few personal items Andrew had kept after Dwayne's death. Sydney had wanted to discard it. "Clutter's the clean aesthetic," she'd argued. But Andrew had insisted on keeping it, though he'd never actually opened it. Tonight, something drew him to the trunk. Maybe it was thinking about Gregory's condition, the same heart defect that had killed his father. Or maybe it was simply that for the first time in decades, Andrew was confronting what it meant to be a father. The brass latches were stiff with disuse. Inside, Andrew found neatly folded clothes, old business documents, and a wooden box with his father's initials carved into the lid. Lifting it out, he discovered it was a correspondence box, filled with envelopes tied together with faded ribbon. The first bundle was labeled simply, "For Andrew." His hands trembled slightly as he untied the ribbon, revealing letters his father had written to him but never sent. The earliest was dated just after his 8th birthday, a few weeks before Dwayne's death. Andrew opened it carefully, unfolding the paper to reveal his father's bold handwriting. "My boy, today I watched you build a tower with your blocks. Your face so serious and focused as you worked. When it toppled, you simply started again, more determined than before." Sydney said, "You get that stubbornness from me." And perhaps she's right. There are things I should tell you face to face, man to man, but my courage fails me. The doctors say my time is short, so I write instead, hoping you'll read these words when you're old enough to understand. The empire we're building isn't worth the cost if it makes you hard. Son, I see it happening already. How Sydney pushes you, how you try so desperately to please her. She wants to forge you into steel, but don't let her burn away your heart in the process. Remember that buildings crumble, fortunes fade, but how you treat people, that's the legacy that matters. I've made mistakes in this regard, terrible ones that haunt me." Andrew's vision blurred. He'd been told his father was a titan of industry, ruthless and brilliant. These vulnerable words from a dying man didn't match the legend Sydney had crafted. He opened another letter, dated a week later. "Andrew, there's something I must confess. You have a brother, half-brother, technically. His name is Alan, and he lives with his mother in Phoenix. He's 14 years older than you, the product of a relationship before I met Sydney. Your mother doesn't know about him. I kept him secret, convinced it was better for everyone now, facing my mortality. I see what a coward I've been. Alan deserved to know his father. You deserve to know your brother. I've set up a trust for him, managed separately from the Hatfield holdings. Sydney must never find out. She would see it as a threat to your inheritance someday. When you're a man, find him. Tell him I'm sorry for my absence. And perhaps you two can forge the bond I was too weak to nurture." Andrew sat back, stunned. A brother. He had a brother he'd never known about. For 34 years, he'd believed himself alone in the world apart from Sydney. The revelation shook the foundations of his identity. He read through more letters, each filling in pieces of a father he'd never truly known, a man with regrets, fears, and a depth of feeling Sydney had never mentioned. The final letter was dated the day before Dwayne died. "My son, Dr. Cooper says, this is likely my last night. The medication isn't working as it should, and my heart grows weaker by the hour. Sydney has already begun reshaping the narrative of my life. In her version, I'll be remembered as a business visionary who died at the peak of his powers. Perhaps that's kinder than the truth, that I was a man who built an empire but failed at what mattered most. Don't make my mistakes, Andrew. Don't sacrifice love for ambition. Don't let Sydney's coldness become your own. And if you ever have children, be the father I couldn't be. Present, honest, loving. Find Alan. Find your own path, and know that despite my failures, I loved you with all my broken heart." Dad Andrew stared at the letter, his father's final words burning into his consciousness. He'd spent his entire adult life becoming exactly what Sydney wanted. Ruthless, ambitious, isolated, following a blueprint that, it turned out, his father had regretted creating. And now, history was repeating itself. He had a son with a damaged heart. A son he hadn't known. A son who might grow up without a father just as Andrew had. The parallels were too stark to ignore. His phone rang, Brandon's name flashing on the screen. "What is it?" Andrew answered, his voice rough. "It's Gregory." Brandon's tone was tight with concern. "His condition has destabilized. They've moved him to intensive care." Andrew was already on his feet. "I'm on my way." At the hospital, the pediatric ICU was a different world from the regular ward. More machines, more urgency, an underlying current of anxiety that was palpable in the air. Dana didn't look up when Andrew entered Gregory's room. She sat beside the bed, her hand enveloping her son's smaller one, her lips moving in what might have been prayer. Gregory lay unconscious, an oxygen mask covering half his face, looking impossibly small amid the medical equipment. "What happened?" Andrew asked Brandon in the hallway. "Arrhythmia episode?" His heart rate became dangerously irregular. Brandon looked exhausted. "We've stabilized him for now, but it's a clear sign his condition is progressing faster than we anticipated. The Zurich treatment is now urgent. I've spoken with their team. They can take him immediately, but he'll need to be transported via medical flight. Arrange it. Whatever it costs." Brandon nodded. "There's something else you should know. The treatment protocol. It's intensive. Gregory will need a family member present throughout. Dana won't leave his side, I'm sure." "Yes, but ideally, both parents should be there." Brandon hesitated. "There's a genetic component to the treatment that might be enhanced with paternal stem cells." Andrew stared at him. "Are you saying I could help treat his condition?" "Potentially, yes. The research suggests that stem cells from a genetic parent with the dormant form of the condition might help regenerate the damaged heart tissue." Brandon looked uncomfortable. "It would require additional testing, a fairly invasive procedure for you. And no guarantees, but it could improve his odds significantly." Andrew's mind flashed to his father's letters. "Don't make my mistakes. Be the father I couldn't be. I'll do whatever's necessary," he said without hesitation. Inside the room, Dana finally looked up as Andrew approached. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale with exhaustion and fear. They said his heart started beating irregularly, she said, voice barely above a whisper. He was fine 1 minute, drawing and talking, and then her voice broke. Andrew stood awkwardly, unsure how to comfort her. In business, emotions were liabilities in this hospital room. They were the only currency that mattered. Brandon is arranging a medical flight to Zurich, he said finally. They can start the treatment immediately. Dana nodded, too drained to argue. I'll need to request extended leave from work. Don't worry about that. I'll cover any lost wages, medical expenses, accommodations, everything. I told you I don't want your money. This isn't about you or me. It's about Gregory. Andrew's voice softened as he looked at his sleeping son. He needs both of us now. Dana studied him, searching for some hidden agenda, finding none. She nodded slightly. Both of us, she agreed quietly. Outside in the hospital corridor, Sydney Hatfield conferred with a distinguished man in an expensive suit. The medical emergency accelerates our timeline, Brian, she said to the man. I want custody papers drawn up immediately, given the mother's financial inability to provide necessary medical care. We should have a strong case for emergency intervention. Brian Curtis, the top family court attorney in New York, nodded. I'll file first thing tomorrow. With the child's condition and your family's resources, we could potentially have an emergency hearing by the end of the week. Sydney smiled, satisfaction glinting in her eyes. Excellent. It seems my grandson's heart may be weak, but his timing is impeccable. The private medical jet hummed steadily at 40,000 feet, its cabin transformed into a flying intensive care unit. Gregory lay sedated in a specialized medical pod, monitors tracking every heartbeat. Dana hadn't left his side since takeoff from New York 6 hours earlier. Andrew sat across the aisle, watching them both. The events of the past 24 hours had moved with dizzying speed. Gregory's sudden deterioration, Brandon's urgent arrangements, and now this flight to Switzerland with two people who, a week ago, had been strangers to him. His oxygen levels are holding steady, the flight nurse reported quietly to Dana. That's a good sign. Dana nodded, her fingers gently stroking Gregory's arm around the IV lines. Her chef's whites had been replaced by hastily purchased travel clothes, jeans and a sweater that highlighted how much weight she'd lost during this ordeal. Andrew's phone buzzed with a message from his executive assistant, Sydney, attempting to schedule emergency board meeting. Claims, family emergency requires your immediate return. He silenced the phone without responding. Whatever game his mother was playing, it could wait, for perhaps the first time in his adult life. Andrew Hatfield had prioritized something above business. You should try to sleep, he said to Dana. The nurse can watch him for a while. Dana shook her head. I can't. You haven't slept in over 30 hours. You'll be no good to Gregory if you collapse. Rich coming from a workaholic who probably operates on 4 hours a night, she shot back. Though without real heat, Andrew almost smiled. 5, actually. And I'm not the one who needs to be strong for a 9-year-old. Something in his tone must have reached her. Dana's shoulders slumped slightly. Maybe just for an hour, she conceded. The nurse helped recline her seat, providing a blanket and pillow. Despite her protests, exhaustion claimed Dana within minutes. With Dana asleep, Andrew moved to the seat beside Gregory's pod. The boy's face looked peaceful in sleep, so like the childhood photos of himself that hung in the Hatfield corporate offices, propaganda pieces Sydney had commissioned to humanize the company image. Andrew had never thought much about those photos before. Now, looking at his son, he wondered what Gregory would remember of his own childhood. Would it be filled with hospital rooms and medical procedures? Or would there be tree-shaped hotels and drawing sessions and whatever else 9-year-old boys were supposed to do? The flight nurse discreetly moved to the front of the cabin, giving Andrew privacy. I don't know if you can hear me, Andrew said softly to Gregory, but I want you to know that I'm going to fix this, whatever it takes. He hesitated, then gently placed his hand over Gregory's smaller one. I missed the beginning of your story. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. The satellite phone near the medical console rang, breaking the moment. The nurse answered, then approached Andrew. It's Dr. Cooper for you, Mr. Hatfield. He says it's urgent. Andrew took the phone, moving toward the back of the cabin to avoid disturbing Dana. Brandon, we're about 2 hours from Zurich. Everything's stable here. Good. That's good. Brandon's voice sounded strained. Andrew, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. What is it? It's about your father's death. The official cause was complications from hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the same condition Gregory has. I know that. It wasn't the whole truth. Brandon took an audible breath. Your father's medication was switched the week before he died. A clinical trial drug was replaced with a compound that accelerated his heart deterioration rather than slowing it. Andrew gripped the phone tighter. What are you saying? I was just a resident then, working under the specialist treating your father. I noticed the discrepancy in the medication logs, but was told it was a planned adjustment to his treatment. I didn't question it further until after he died, when I realized the change made no clinical sense. You're telling me my father was given the wrong medication, that it killed him. Yes. And when I raised concerns, I was encouraged to drop the matter. Your mother made it clear that pursuing it would end my career before it began. The plane seemed to drop from under Andrew's feet, though they maintained their smooth flight path. My mother knew about this. Not just knew. Andrew. I believe she orchestrated it. The accusation was so outrageous that Andrew nearly hung up. That's impossible. Why would she? Your father was planning to divorce her, Brandon said quietly. He had confided in me that he was preparing to leave, take you with him. He discovered something about Sydney, something that devastated him. He never told me what? Andrew thought of the letters hidden in his father's trunk, the half-brother in Phoenix, the regrets of a dying man. I need proof, Andrew said, his voice hardly recognizable to his own ears. I've kept records. Not enough for legal action after all these years, but enough to convince you. I'm sending everything to your secure server now. Brandon paused. There's more, Andrew. The specialist who treated your father. It was me who recommended him to treat Gregory. I needed to ensure history didn't repeat itself. Why tell me this now, after all these years? Because Sydney is making moves to gain custody of Gregory. I've seen this pattern before, Andrew. I can't stay silent again. After ending the call, Andrew stood frozen, his world tilting on its axis, the loving, if demanding, mother he'd known his entire life. Had she murdered his father? Was she now targeting his son? His phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification. Brandon's documents, with shaking hands, Andrew downloaded and read through them. Medical logs, diary entries, copies of threatening letters from Sydney's lawyers dating back decades. The evidence wasn't conclusive in a legal sense, but to Andrew, the pattern was unmistakable. Sydney had silenced Brandon, manipulating a young doctor's fear to cover up what amounted to murder, and now she was maneuvering to take Gregory. A soft groan from the medical pod pulled Andrew back to the present. Gregory was stirring, his eyes fluttering open. Dad? The word, spoken so naturally, knocked the air from Andrew's lungs. I'm here, he managed, moving quickly to Gregory's side. How are you feeling, buddy? Weird, kind of floaty. Gregory's eyes widened as he registered his surroundings. Are we on a plane? A special medical plane. We're taking you to doctors in Switzerland who can help your heart. Gregory considered this. Is Mom here too? Right there. Andrew pointed to Dana's sleeping form. She's been awake taking care of you for so long she needed some rest. Gregory nodded, accepting this with a child's easy adaptation to strange circumstances. Will you be staying too in Switzerland? The simple question carried a weight Gregory couldn't understand. Yes, Andrew said firmly. I'll be there the whole time. The boy's smile was worth more than any business deal Andrew had ever closed. The flight nurse returned to check Gregory's vitals, seeming pleased with what she found. His numbers are looking good. That rest did him good. Dana stirred at the voices. Immediately alert. Gregory, are you okay, sweetheart? Mom, Dad says we're going to Switzerland. Have you ever been there before? Do they have good ice cream? Dana's eyes flashed to Andrew at Gregory's casual use of Dad, but she simply moved to her son's side. I've never been there, but I bet they have excellent ice cream. Maybe the best in the world. We'll find out together, Andrew added. The three of them talked quietly for the remainder of the flight, Gregory drifting in and out of sleep, Dana and Andrew forming an unspoken alliance in their shared focus on their son as the plane began its descent into Zurich. Andrew's phone buzzed once more, a message from his lawyer in New York. Emergency custody hearing scheduled for Friday. Sydney Hatfield petitioning for temporary custody on grounds of medical necessity. Immediate response required. Rage unlike anything Andrew had ever experienced coursed through him. Sydney wasn't just making a play for Gregory. She was actively trying to take him while Andrew and Dana were out of the country. Dana must have seen something in his expression. "What is it?" "Nothing to worry about right now," Andrew said, unwilling to add to her burden. "Just some business that needs handling." As they prepared for landing, Andrew made a decision. His entire life, he'd been Sydney's son, molded in her image, following her ambitions, becoming the man she wanted him to be. Now, for the first time, he was Gregory's father, and that changed everything. After they landed and Gregory was transferred to the waiting ambulance, Andrew pulled Dana aside while the medical team secured their son for transport. "There's something you need to know," he said quietly. "My mother is filing for emergency custody of Gregory." Dana's face drained of color. "She can't do that. She's trying, but I won't let it happen." "Why are you telling me this now? When we're in a foreign country and our son is about to start treatment?" Andrew met her gaze directly. "Because we need to present a united front. No more fighting between us. No more history getting in the way of what's best for Gregory." "And what is best for Gregory, in your opinion?" "Both of us. Together." Andrew took a deep breath. "And there's something else you should know. Something about my mother, my father's death, and why I think she's really after Gregory." As the ambulance doors closed behind them, Andrew began to explain what Brandon had revealed. About his father's death, about Sydney's manipulations, about the half-brother he'd never known existed. With each revelation, Dana's expression shifted from skepticism to horror, to a grim understanding that matched Andrew's own. "She's not getting anywhere near our son," Dana said when he finished, her voice steel-edged with maternal protection. For the first time since that night in the restaurant, Andrew and Dana were truly aligned, bound by the fierce, primal instinct to protect their child from the predator circling their family. The Zurich Heart Institute resembled a modern alpine retreat more than a hospital. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased snow-capped mountains, while warm wood accents and comfortable seating areas created an atmosphere of calm that belied the cutting-edge medicine practiced within its walls. Gregory had been admitted immediately upon arrival, whisked away for a battery of tests, while Dana and Andrew were ushered into consultation with Dr. Elise Weber, the clinic's chief cardiologist. "Gregory's condition is indeed advancing rapidly," Dr. Weber confirmed, her Swiss-German accent precise and clinical as she reviewed the test results. "But you've brought him to us at a critical window where intervention can still be highly effective. What exactly does this intervention involve?" Dana asked, dark circles under her eyes highlighting her exhaustion. Dr. Weber activated a holographic display, showing a three-dimensional model of a heart. "Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy causes the heart muscle to thicken abnormally, which makes it harder to pump blood effectively. Our approach combines 3 technologies: targeted gene therapy to interrupt the genetic expression of the condition, stem cell regeneration to repair damaged tissue, and a specialized biofeedback system to retrain the heart's rhythm." Andrew leaned forward. "Dr. Cooper mentioned that my stem cells might be beneficial to the treatment. Is that true?" "Potentially, yes." Dr. Weber's intelligent eyes assessed Andrew. "You carry the same genetic marker, but in a dormant form. Your cells could provide a blueprint, so to speak, for how Gregory's heart should function." "What would that involve?" Dana asked. "A series of stem cell extractions from Mr. Hatfield, followed by laboratory cultivation and preparation before introduction to Gregory's system." Dr. Weber looked between them. "It would require both of you to remain in Zurich throughout the treatment course, approximately 6 weeks." "That's not a problem," Andrew said immediately. Dana nodded in agreement. "When can we begin?" "We've scheduled Gregory's first procedure for tomorrow morning, Mr. Hatfield. If you're willing to participate as a donor, we can begin your preparation this afternoon. I'm ready whenever you are." After Dr. Weber left, Dana and Andrew sat in weighted silence. The enormity of what lay ahead, the risks, the uncertainties, the shared responsibility, hung between them. "Thank you," Dana said finally, "for doing this for Gregory." Andrew looked surprised. "He's my son, a fact you've only known for a week." Dana's smile was small but genuine. "Many men in your position would write a check and call it done," before Andrew could respond. His phone buzzed with a video call from his lawyer in New York. "I need to take this," he said, stepping into the hallway. The call was brief but alarming. Sydney had accelerated her legal maneuvers. hiring not one but 3 top family court specialists and filing emergency papers claiming both Andrew and Dana were making medically unsound decisions by taking Gregory out of the country. "She's claiming temporary insanity," Andrew hissed, keeping his voice low. Not in those words, but essentially suggesting that the shock of discovering paternity has caused you to make rash decisions contrary to the child's welfare, his lawyer explained. "It's a bold strategy, but with her connections to several judges, counter everything. I want our best people on this, better than hers, and file for a restraining order against her. I don't want her anywhere near Gregory or the clinic." After ending the call, Andrew stood motionless in the hallway, confronting the reality that his mother, the woman who had shaped his entire existence, was now his enemy. The sensation was disorienting, like standing on suddenly shifting ground. A nurse approached, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Hatfield, we're ready to begin your preparation procedures." Andrew was led to a sterile room where a medical team explained the stem cell extraction process. It would be invasive and uncomfortable, multiple bone marrow extractions over several days, a regimen of injections to stimulate cell production, and various tests to ensure compatibility. "There are risks," the specialist warned. "Infection, adverse reactions to the stimulants, potential complications from the extraction sites." "I understand," Andrew said. "Let's proceed," as he changed into a hospital gown. Andrew caught his reflection in a glass cabinet. Expensive suit replaced by thin cotton. Power tie exchanged for exposed vulnerability. For the first time in years, he looked like exactly what he was, a human being, stripped of the trappings of wealth and position, facing the same fears any father would feel. The irony wasn't lost on him. All his life, he'd avoided emotional entanglement, viewing connection as weakness. Now he was literally opening his body, offering his physical essence to save his son, the very definition of vulnerability. In another wing of the clinic, Dana sat beside Gregory's bed as he slept. The new medications had made him drowsy, but his color looked better already. "Your dad is doing something really brave for you," she whispered, smoothing his hair, something I never thought he had in him. A soft knock interrupted her vigil. Dr. Weber entered, accompanied by a younger doctor. "Mrs. Mason, this is Dr. Levine, our pediatric specialist. He'll be monitoring Gregory throughout the treatment." "Ms." Dana corrected automatically. "We're not married." Something flickered across Dr. Weber's face. Not judgment, but recalculation. "I see that actually raises a legal matter we need to address. For this experimental procedure, we require consent from both legal parents, given your international situation, and the custody filing we've been made aware of." Dana tensed. "How do you know about that?" "Mrs. Hatfield contacted our administrative offices this morning, informing us of pending legal proceedings in New York, Doctor." Weber's tone remained neutral. "While this doesn't affect our medical decisions, we do need to ensure all paperwork is properly filed." Dana's hands clenched in her lap. "Sydney Hatfield has no legal standing in my son's care." "Of course, but it would be helpful if you and Mr. Hatfield could sign additional documentation confirming joint medical decision-making authority, regardless of custody arrangements." "I'll sign whatever's needed," Dana said. "And I'm sure Andrew will too." After the doctors left, Dana fought back tears of frustration. Even here, thousands of miles away, Sydney's shadow reached them. She needed air, space to think. "I'll be right back." "Sweetheart," she whispered to sleeping Gregory, kissing his forehead before stepping into the hallway. She found herself wandering to a small courtyard garden at the center of the facility, designed to give patients and families a taste of nature amid the clinical setting. To her surprise, Brandon Cooper sat on a bench there, looking haggard from travel. "Brandon, what are you doing here?" He stood quickly. "Dana, I flew in on the next available flight after you left. I wanted to be here, in case my expertise was needed." Something in his manner made Dana suspicious. "Andrew told me what you revealed, about his father's death and Sydney's involvement." Brandon's shoulders sagged. "I should have spoken up years ago. Maybe none of this would be happening now if I had. Why didn't you?" Fear, at first, then guilt, then it just seemed too late to matter. He met her eyes directly. "But when I saw Gregory, when I realized he had the same condition and that Sydney was circling, I couldn't stay silent anymore." Dana studied him, weighing his words against her instincts. "You care about Gregory. I've been his doctor since he was born. And yes, I care. Brandon looked away. I also owe it to Dwayne Hatfield's memory to ensure his grandson doesn't suffer the same fate. Before Dana could respond, a commotion from inside the clinic caught their attention. Medical staff were rushing toward the treatment wing where Andrew had been taken. Dana felt her heart lurch, an instinctive sense of dread washing over her. Without a word to Brandon, she hurried back inside, following the urgent activity to its source. She found Andrew on a gurney, medical staff surrounding him as monitors blared warnings. His face was ashen, his body convulsing. "What happened?" she demanded, pushing her way to his side. "Severe reaction to the stimulation protocol," a nurse explained, preparing an injection. "His body is rejecting the treatment." Dr. Weber arrived, immediately taking charge. "Get him to intensive care. I want a full panel of anti-rejection medications ready." As they wheeled Andrew away, Dana stood frozen in the hallway. The man she had once hated, who had only recently entered their lives, who was now their best hope for saving Gregory, was fighting for his own life. She felt a presence beside her, and turned to find Brandon. "This doesn't make sense," he said, his medical mind already analyzing. "The reaction is too severe for a standard protocol, unless what?" Brandon's face darkened. "Unless something was added to the stimulants, something to trigger this specific response." Dana stared at him in horror as the implication became clear. "Sydney couldn't possibly. She has contacts everywhere. Money opens many doors." Brandon looked grim. "And she's done it before." Dana felt cold determination replace her shock. "We need to tell Dr. Weber immediately and increase security around Gregory." "I'll speak to Weber. You stay with Gregory," Brandon instructed. "Don't let anyone administer any medication unless you've personally verified it with her or me." As Dana hurried back to Gregory's room, her mind raced. For years, she'd viewed Andrew Hatfield as the villain in her story, the selfish billionaire who'd discarded her without a thought. Now he lay fighting for his life because he'd tried to save their son. And his mother, a woman Dana had never met before a week ago, was emerging as a threat more dangerous than she could have imagined. In Gregory's room, she found her son awake, looking out the window at the Swiss mountains. "Mom, the nurse said Dad is helping make my heart better with special cells from his body." "Is that true?" Dana took his small hand in hers, forcing a smile despite the fear churning inside her. "Yes, sweetheart. That's exactly what he's doing. Is he okay? You look worried." Dana hesitated, then decided on a version of the truth. "The procedure is hard on Dad's body too, but he's strong, just like you." Gregory nodded solemnly. "I hope he gets better soon. I want to show him my new drawings of tree hotels when he feels better." "You will, baby. You will." Dana took up her position beside Gregory's bed, a sentinel against the dangers she now knew threatened both the males in her life. In less than 2 weeks, Andrew Hatfield had gone from stranger to co-parent to someone whose survival mattered deeply, not just for Gregory's sake, but in ways Dana wasn't ready to examine. Down the hall, doctors fought to stabilize Andrew, unaware that his medical crisis was likely no accident, just as the death of another Hatfield man had been no accident 34 years earlier. 2 generations, 2 Hatfield men, 2 lives hanging by a thread, and behind it all, one woman's relentless grip on a family legacy she would protect at any cost. "Mr. Hatfield, can you hear me?" Andrew fought through layers of fog, the voice distant but insistent. His eyelids felt impossibly heavy, but he forced them open to see Dr. Weber leaning over him, her expression professionally concerned. "Welcome back," she said, adjusting something on the IV beside his bed. "You gave us quite a scare." Andrew tried to speak, his throat raw. A nurse offered ice chips, which he accepted gratefully before trying again. "What happened?" His voice sounded alien to his own ears. Weak, raspy, severe anaphylactic response to the stimulation drugs, Dr. Weber explained. "Extremely unusual with the compounds we use. We're investigating how this could have occurred." Memory rushed back. The preparation room, the first injections, then blinding pain and darkness. A more urgent thought followed. "Gregory, is he—" "Your son is stable," Dr. Weber assured him. "We've postponed his procedure until you're recovered." "How long have I been out?" "Nearly 48 hours. The reaction triggered a cascade of complications, including temporary kidney dysfunction. We had to place you in a medically induced coma to manage the symptoms. Andrew tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through his body. Please, don't exert yourself, the doctor cautioned. Your body has been through significant trauma. I need to see Gregory and Dana. Ms. Mason has been dividing her time between your room and Gregory's. She just went to get some rest, the first she's taken in days. This information stunned Andrew more than his medical condition. Dana had been watching over him, after everything. There's something else you should know, Dr. Weber continued, lowering her voice. Dr. Cooper has raised concerns about the nature of your reaction. The toxicology reports showed traces of a compound that should not have been present in our standard protocol. Andrew's jaw tightened. Sydney, Dr. Weber's expression remained neutral. We've reported the incident to hospital security and local authorities. All treatments for both you and Gregory are now being personally verified by either myself or Dr. Cooper. I need to make some calls. Mr. Hatfield, you need to rest. What I need, Andrew said with a flash of his usual authority, is my phone and some privacy. Recognizing the futility of arguing, Dr. Weber nodded to the nurse, who retrieved Andrew's phone from a drawer. 10 minutes, Doctor, Weber conceded. Then you rest. When they left, Andrew made 3 calls. First to his security chief, ordering a complete protection detail for the clinic. Next to his lawyer, accelerating the restraining order against Sydney. And finally to a private investigator he trusted, with instructions to track his mother's movements and communications. His strength fading, Andrew had just put down the phone when there was a soft knock at the door. Come in, he called, expecting a nurse. Instead, Gregory peeked around the door, his face brightening when he saw Andrew awake. Dad, you're not sleeping anymore. Before Andrew could respond, Dana appeared behind their son. Gregory, I told you to wait. Your father needs rest. It's fine, Andrew said quickly, genuinely pleased to see them both. Come in. Gregory approached the bed cautiously, taking in the medical equipment with the experienced eye of a child too familiar with hospitals. Does it hurt? He asked, pointing to the IV in Andrew's arm. Not too much, Andrew lied, smiling despite his discomfort. How are you feeling? Better than yesterday. The doctors say my heart is behaving itself right now. Gregory climbed carefully onto the chair beside the bed. Mom said you got sick trying to help make me better. Andrew glanced at Dana, who stood watching them with an unreadable expression. Something like that. I made you this. Gregory handed over a folded paper. Andrew opened it to find a colorfully drawn Get Well card featuring what appeared to be a tree-shaped hospital with stick figures of the 3 of them standing in front. It's a healing hotel, Gregory explained earnestly, where people go to get better, but it's not scary like regular hospitals. See the glass elevators in the trunk, and those are healing gardens on each branch where patients can go. It's brilliant, Andrew said, genuinely impressed by the detail and thought in the child's drawing. Maybe we should build it someday. Gregory's eyes widened. Really, could we? Why not? Hatfield hotels could use some innovation. Dana stepped closer. Gregory, why don't you go with Nurse Elsa to get your afternoon checkup? I need to talk to your father for a few minutes. Once Gregory had left with the nurse, Dana took the seat he'd vacated. Dr. Weber told me what happened with the medication. Brandon is convinced it was deliberate. So am I, Andrew said grimly. Your mother tried to kill you. Dana stated it flatly, the enormity of the situation distilled to its essence, or at least incapacitate me long enough to push through the custody hearing without opposition. Andrew's voice hardened. Either way, she's crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Dana studied him, noting the changes in the man she'd once known. Despite his physical weakness, there was a clarity in his eyes she'd never seen before, as if layers of insulation had been stripped away, revealing something authentic beneath the corporate armor. The police are investigating, she said, but without concrete proof. Sydney is too careful for that. She'll have used intermediaries, paid in untraceable ways. Andrew shifted, wincing slightly. We need to focus on Gregory now. Has Dr. Weber discussed alternative approaches given my unavailability as a donor? She's proposed modifying the treatment protocol to use banked cord blood with similar genetic markers. It's not ideal, but it could work. Dana hesitated. The good news is that Gregory's condition has temporarily stabilized. The medications they're giving him seem to be helping. At least for now. How long? A few weeks, maybe a month. It buys us time. Andrew nodded, processing this information. And how are you holding up? The question, asked with genuine concern, caught Dana off guard. I'm managing. The clinic arranged a room for me nearby. Gregory seems to be adapting well. All things considered. Thank you, Andrew said unexpectedly, for watching over me. Dr. Weber mentioned you've been here. Dana looked away, uncomfortable with his gratitude. I didn't do it for you. Gregory was worried. He's already attached to you, whether I like it or not. And you, are you still determined to hate me? The directness of the question made her meet his gaze again. I don't hate you, Andrew. I don't have the energy for it anymore. She sighed. The past is the past. We both made mistakes. I made the mistakes, Andrew corrected. You just paid for them. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Too much history. Too many unresolved feelings. Too little time to process the seismic shifts of the past 2 weeks. I should check on Gregory, Dana said finally, standing. Dana. Andrew caught her hand before she could leave. We'll get through this. All of us. Together. The simple promise, spoken with unexpected vulnerability, resonated more deeply than she cared to admit. Get some rest, she said softly, gently withdrawing her hand. Gregory needs you strong. After she left, Andrew sank back against the pillows, exhaustion washing over him. The brief conversation had drained what little energy he'd recovered, but beneath the fatigue, he felt something unfamiliar stirring, a sense of purpose beyond stock prices and corporate acquisitions. For the first time in his adult life, Andrew Hatfield was fighting for something that truly mattered. 2 weeks passed in a blur of medical procedures, gradual recovery, and cautious planning. Andrew regained his strength more quickly than the doctors had predicted, driven by determination to help Gregory. By the 3rd week, he was cleared to resume a modified stem cell donation protocol, more carefully monitored, with each medication batch personally verified by Dr. Weber. Gregory's condition remained stable, his spirits buoyed by daily visits from both parents. A routine developed naturally. Dana spent mornings with Gregory while Andrew underwent treatments. Then they would switch in the afternoons. Evenings often found all three together, Gregory chattering about his day while Dana and Andrew shared quiet conversations about his care, gradually expanding to include other topics. One evening, as Gregory napped after dinner, Andrew found Dana on the clinic's rooftop garden, staring out at the alpine sunset. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, joining her at the railing. "Just wondering how my life took such a wild detour," she replied. "A month ago, I was just a chef trying to make rent and keep my son healthy. Now I'm in Switzerland, co-parenting with a billionaire, and hiding from his possibly homicidal mother. Despite everything." Andrew laughed. "When you put it that way," Dana smiled too, the tension between them easing incrementally with each passing day. "Brandon says you're responding well to the new protocol. They should be able to harvest enough stem cells by next week. And just in time?" Gregory's last echo showed the thickening is progressing again. Dana nodded, her smile fading. "I'm scared, Andrew. What if it doesn't work?" The vulnerability in her voice moved him. Without thinking, he placed his hand over hers on the railing. "It will. We have the best doctors, the most advanced treatment. And if that's not enough, then we fight harder. Find another way." Andrew turned to face her fully. "I missed 9 years, Dana. I'm not missing any more." Dana looked at their hands, then up at him. The setting sun gilded her features, reminding Andrew of what had first attracted him to her a decade earlier, not just her beauty, but the quiet strength behind it. "You've changed," she observed. "Nearly dying will do that to a person." His attempt at humor fell flat. "Or maybe it's finding out your entire life has been built on lies, or discovering you have a son who somehow sees the best in you despite everything." "He has a gift for that," Dana agreed softly. "Seeing the good in people. He gets that from you." Their eyes held for a moment too long, something unspoken passing between them. Dana gently withdrew her hand. "We should get back. It's almost time for his evening medication." As they walked back to Gregory's room, neither mentioned the moment on the rooftop. But something had shifted between them, a fragile bridge forming over the chasm of their past. Gregory was awake when they returned, drawing intently in his sketchbook. He looked up with a smile that transformed his face, making him look briefly like the carefree child he should have been. "I finished it," he announced proudly, holding up his latest creation, a detailed family portrait showing the three of them standing in front of what appeared to be the Silver Crown restaurant. "It's us," he explained unnecessarily. "When we all go home and I'm better." Dana and Andrew exchanged glances, neither having discussed what home would look like after Zurich. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Dana said, sitting beside him on the bed. Andrew studied the drawing, struck by the simple truth it conveyed. Three people, connected by more than genetics, forming something new from the fragments of what had been broken. "Yes," he agreed quietly. "It's perfect." 3 months after arriving in Zurich, Gregory Hatfield Mason stood at the window of his hospital room, watching snowflakes dance against the glass. The Swiss winter had arrived in earnest, blanketing the clinic grounds in pristine white that matched the boy's hospital gown. "All set for the final scan?" Dr. Weber asked, entering with her tablet. Gregory nodded, his smile revealing a recently lost tooth. "Mom says if the results are good, we can go home next week." "That's the plan," Dr. Weber confirmed, her normally formal demeanor softened by genuine affection for her young patient. "But first, we need to see how that heart of yours is doing." The journey of the past months had been grueling. Gregory had undergone 3 separate procedures using stem cells harvested from Andrew, each followed by weeks of recovery and anxious monitoring. The initial results had been promising but inconclusive, with Gregory's heart showing only minimal improvement. Then, 6 weeks ago, a breakthrough. The 3rd treatment had triggered remarkable regeneration in Gregory's heart tissue. The abnormal thickening began to recede, and his cardiac function improved dramatically. Dr. Weber had been cautiously optimistic, warning that such rapid improvement might be temporary, but subsequent tests had shown the changes were stabilizing. Dana entered just as they were preparing to take Gregory for his scan. "Sorry I'm late," she said, slightly breathless. The call with the Silver Crown ran long. "Is everything okay at the restaurant?" Gregory asked. "Everything's great, sweetie. They're working on the special menu for your birthday party." Dana helped him into the wheelchair that hospital protocol required, though Gregory was perfectly capable of walking now. "Is Dad coming for the scan?" "He'll meet us there. He had some business calls this morning." As they wheeled Gregory toward the imaging department, Dana reflected on how easily the word "Dad" now flowed from her son's lips, and how naturally Andrew had grown into the role. The man who had once epitomized cold corporate ambition had transformed during their Swiss sojourn, his priorities reshuffled by the twin catalysts of nearly losing his life and finding his son. Andrew was waiting outside the scanning room, his laptop closed as soon as he saw them approach. "There's the man of the hour," he said, high-fiving Gregory. "Ready for your close-up?" "Yep, Dr. Weber says this might be the last one. Let's not get ahead of ourselves," the doctor cautioned gently, "but we are very hopeful." As Gregory was taken into the scanning room, Andrew and Dana waited outside, the familiar routine having worn smooth the awkwardness between them. "How's the restaurant transition going?" Andrew asked, referring to Dana's morning call. "Good. Gregory's happy with the renovations, and the chef I recommended is working out well." She smiled faintly. "Still feels surreal to be the owner instead of the employee." Andrew had purchased the Silver Crown 2 months earlier, transferring ownership to Dana in a gesture she'd initially resisted, but ultimately accepted. Not as charity, but as recognition of her years of dedication to the establishment, and as a practical solution for their return to New York. The restaurant was being rebranded as the New Heart, scheduled to reopen in time for Gregory's birthday celebration. And the apartment. "The renovations are finished. It's strange seeing the pictures. I still can't quite believe we'll be living there." Again, practicality had prevailed over pride. The brownstone apartment Andrew had purchased was in Gregory's school district, with a first-floor space that could be converted into a test kitchen for Dana's consulting business. She had insisted on paying rent, and he had agreed, though both knew the amount was symbolic rather than market rate. "Have you heard from Sydney?" Dana asked, lowering her voice. Andrew's expression darkened. "My lawyers have. She's still fighting the restraining order, claiming medical emergency was the reason for her actions." The police investigation into Andrew's medical incident had stalled, without sufficient evidence to charge Sydney, though her involvement was clear to those who knew the circumstances. The emergency custody hearing had been dismissed after Andrew's legal team presented evidence of Sydney's history of manipulation, but she remained a threat. Wounded, isolated, but still dangerous. She won't give up easily, Dana warned. I know, but neither will we. A comfortable silence fell between them, a new development in their relationship. The enforced proximity of the Swiss clinic, the shared focus on Gregory's care, and the gradual uncovering of Sydney's machinations had forged an unexpected alliance, not quite friendship, not quite romance, but something equally profound, a bond formed in the crucible of crisis. Dr. Weber emerged from the scanning room, her expression carefully neutral until the door closed behind her. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. It's remarkable, she said, pulling up images on her tablet. Look here. The ventricular wall thickness has normalized, and cardiac output is within standard range for a child his age. Dana gripped Andrew's arm involuntarily. Are you saying, Gregory's heart is healing? The cellular regeneration has exceeded our most optimistic projections. Dr. Weber's professional composure slipped further, revealing genuine wonder. I've never seen such a complete response to the treatment. We'll need to monitor him, of course, and continue some medications, but he's going to be okay. Andrew finished, his voice rough with emotion. Barring unexpected complications, yes, Gregory has an excellent prognosis. Dana didn't realize she was crying until Andrew handed her his handkerchief. She accepted it without comment, too overwhelmed for words. Can we tell him? Andrew asked. He's changing back into his clothes. Why don't you both go in? This is news the family should share together. Family? The word hung in the air between them as Dr. Weber excused herself to complete the medical documentation. Inside the changing room, Gregory was pulling on his sweater, his movements stronger and more fluid than they had been in months. Hey, buddy, Andrew said, trying to keep his voice steady. We've got some news. Gregory looked between his parents, instantly alert to their emotional states. Is it bad? No. Sweetheart. Dana knelt beside him, taking his hands. It's the opposite of bad, doctor. Weber says your heart is getting better. Much better. The treatment worked. Gregory's eyes widened. It worked, Andrew confirmed, joining them. Your heart is healing. We can go home soon. Gregory processed this information, his expression thoughtful rather than immediately jubilant. So, I won't have to take so many medicines anymore or see doctors all the time. You'll still need some medicine and checkups, Dana explained, but not nearly as many as before. And I can play soccer and swim like the other kids. Eventually. Yes, Andrew said. We'll follow the doctor's instructions about physical activity, but you'll be able to do normal kid things. Gregory digested this, then asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. And we'll still be together. You won't go away again. The question pierced Andrew's carefully maintained composure. He knelt beside Dana, meeting his son's eyes directly. I'm not going anywhere, Gregory. I promise. We might not all live in the same house, but we'll always be your parents. Together. This, finally, brought the smile they'd been waiting for. Gregory throwing his arms around both their necks, nearly toppling them with his enthusiasm. This is the best day ever, he declared. Better than Christmas and birthdays combined. Later that evening, after Gregory had fallen asleep, exhausted by excitement, Dana and Andrew sat in the small lounge near his room, sharing a bottle of wine the clinic staff had provided in celebration. To Gregory's new heart, Andrew proposed, raising his glass. To second chances, Dana countered, clinking her glass against his. They sipped in companionable silence, watching the snow fall outside the window, each lost in private thoughts about the journey that had brought them here. I've been thinking about what happens when we get back to New York, Andrew said finally. About the structure we create for Gregory, Dana nodded. Co-parenting across households will be an adjustment for him. It doesn't have to be that way. Andrew set down his glass, choosing his words carefully. We could consider a different arrangement. Dana gave him a wary look. What kind of arrangement? A shared household. Not necessarily. Romantic, but practical, for Gregory's sake. You're suggesting we live together. As what? Roommates. As partners in raising our son? Andrew leaned forward. Think about it, Dana. Gregory has spent the last 3 months with both of us present. Separating now, even with the apartments being close, would be another disruption. Dana studied him, trying to discern his true motivation. This is about Gregory, nothing else. The question hung between them, laden with unspoken complications. Their relationship had evolved beyond antagonism during their time in Switzerland, but neither had acknowledged the subtle shifts, the lingering glances, the casual touches, the late-night conversations that stretched beyond Gregory's care. It's primarily about Gregory, Andrew said carefully, but I would be lying if I said I hadn't come to value your presence in my life, beyond our shared connection to our son. The admission, understated as it was, represented a massive departure from the Andrew Hatfield, who had dismissed her from his office 9 years earlier. We can't just erase the past, Dana said softly. No, but perhaps we can build something new from it. Andrew held her gaze. I'm not asking for an answer now, just think about it. Dana nodded, neither accepting nor rejecting the proposal. We should get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. Gregory wants to try the Swiss hot chocolate in the village before his afternoon checkup. As they walked back toward their respective rooms, Andrew paused outside Gregory's door, peering through the small window at their sleeping son. It's strange, he said quietly. A few months ago, the Hatfield legacy meant hotels and stock portfolios. Now, when I look at him, I see what really matters. Dana smiled, a genuine warmth reaching her eyes. Welcome to parenthood, Andrew. Better late than never. Happy birthday, Gregory. The chorus of voices filled the newly renovated dining room of the New Heart restaurant as Gregory Hatfield Mason blew out the 10 candles on his elaborately designed cake, a miniature edible replica of his tree hotel concept. Crafted by Dana's former sous chef, the boy beamed, his healthy color and energetic movements a testament to the success of his treatment. 3 weeks had passed since their return from Switzerland, and while Gregory still took daily medications and attended regular checkups, his progress continued to exceed expectations. The birthday celebration served multiple purposes, marking Gregory's milestone birthday, celebrating his recovery, and officially reopening the restaurant under Dana's ownership. The guest list included Gregory's schoolmates, medical staff who had cared for him in New York, and selected friends and colleagues of both parents. Make a wish, Dana encouraged, standing beside her son with unmistakable pride. Gregory closed his eyes tight, took a deep breath, and blew out all 10 candles in one go, prompting another round of applause. What did you wish for? Asked one of his friends. Can't tell, Gregory replied with the wisdom of childhood. Or it won't come true. But his eyes darted momentarily between Dana and Andrew, who stood on his other side, giving a hint that perhaps his wish involved his still evolving family situation. As the children moved on to games organized in the restaurant's private dining section, Andrew found himself gravitating toward the front entrance, where a brass plaque had been installed that morning. It read simply, "The New Heart, Est, 2025, with a small inscription beneath, in honor of 3 generations of Hatfields finding their way home. The sentiment had been Dana's idea, acknowledging the past while embracing a new beginning. Andrew traced the letters with his fingertip, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. Penny for your thoughts. Dana's voice interrupted his reverie. She'd changed from chef's whites to a simple blue dress for the party portion of the evening. Just appreciating the symbolism, Andrew replied. You have a way with words. And you have a way of hovering by the door as if planning an escape, she teased, though her eyes were watchful. Everything okay? Andrew nodded, adjusting his tie, the only outward sign of his discomfort. Large social gatherings had never been his forte, especially ones centered around emotional milestones rather than business objectives. It's strange, he admitted. All these people celebrating Gregory as if they've known him forever, while I'm still catching up on the first 9 years of his life. Dana's expression softened. You're doing fine, Andrew. He adores you. Because children are naturally forgiving, far more than adults. The observation hung between them, laden with their complicated history. 3 months in Switzerland and 3 weeks of co-parenting in New York had built a functional relationship. But the deeper wounds of the past remained incompletely healed. Dana's response was interrupted by the restaurant's maitre d'. Ironically, the same Gregory who had engineered their fateful encounter months earlier. Ms. Mason, "There's someone asking to see Mr. Hatfield. He says it's urgent." Gregory, the maitre d', looked uncomfortable. "I told him it's a private event, but he's quite insistent." Andrew sighed. "Probably something from the office. I'll handle it." "Actually," the maitre d' continued, "he says his name is Alan Hatfield from Phoenix." Andrew froze, the name hitting him like a physical blow. Alan Hatfield, his half-brother, the one mentioned in his father's letters, the brother he'd spent months searching for after Sydney's cryptic dying words in the hospital. "Where is he?" Andrew asked, his voice tight. "Just outside. I asked him to wait by the host stand." Dana touched Andrew's arm. "Do you want me to come with you?" The offer surprised him. Yes, I'd appreciate that." Together they walked to the restaurant's entrance, where a man in his mid-50s stood examining the decor. Even before he turned, Andrew recognized something in his posture, a familiar set to the shoulders that he'd seen countless times in photographs of his father. When Alan turned, the resemblance became undeniable. The same amber eyes, the distinctive Hatfield brow, though weathered by decades of a life very different from Andrew's privileged existence. "Andrew Hatfield," the man asked, extending his hand. "I'm Alan. I believe we're brothers." Andrew accepted the handshake, momentarily speechless. "How did you find me?" Alan smiled. Their father's smile. "Wasn't hard. Your company's annual report has your picture on page 2. Once I knew what to look for, the resemblance was pretty clear. But why now, after all these years? Your investigator found me first, about a month ago. Tough woman, very persistent. Said you'd been searching for me." Andrew made a mental note to give his pie a substantial bonus. "I have been, ever since I found our father's letters." Alan's expression grew serious. "That's why I wanted to meet in person. Those letters, they only tell part of the story." Before Andrew could respond, Gregory darted out from the dining room, spotting Dana and making a beeline for her. "Mom, we're about to start the treasure hunt, but they need you to explain the clues." His eyes landed on Alan, widening with surprise. "Whoa, you look like Dad." Alan stared at the boy, clearly startled by the resemblance that now spanned 3 generations. "Gregory, this is..." Andrew hesitated, unsure how to introduce his newly discovered relative. "I'm your Uncle Alan," the older man said, crouching to Gregory's level. "Your grandfather was my dad, too." Gregory processed this with remarkable composure. "Cool. I didn't know I had an uncle. Do you build hotels, too?" Alan laughed. "No. I restore classic cars, but I drew building designs when I was about your age, just like your dad probably did. I designed tree hotels," Gregory informed him seriously. "Dad says we might build one someday." "I'd like to see that," Alan replied, matching his nephew's earnest tone. "Gregory," Dana interjected gently, "why don't you go back to your friends? Tell them I'll be there in a minute for the treasure hunt." Once Gregory had returned to the party, an awkward silence descended among the adults. "He seems like a great kid," Alan said finally. "He is," Andrew agreed. "He's been through a lot recently. Same heart condition our father had." Alan's expression darkened. "That's partly why I'm here. After your investigator contacted me, I did some digging of my own, found some old medical records, some correspondence, things that might shed light on what really happened to our father." Dana glanced at the dining room, where the birthday celebration continued. "This probably isn't the best time or place for that conversation." "You're right," Alan acknowledged. "I didn't mean to intrude on a family event." "You are family," Andrew said firmly. "Please, stay for the celebration. We can talk business tomorrow." The simple invitation, acknowledging a connection denied for decades, seemed to catch Alan off guard. "I wouldn't want to impose." "You wouldn't be," Dana assured him. "Gregory would love to get to know his uncle, and I'm curious about the other side of the Hatfield family tree." After a moment's hesitation, Alan nodded. "I'd like that, thank you." As they re-entered the dining room, Andrew noticed Brandon Cooper in conversation with Gregory's cardiologist near the dessert table. The doctor caught Andrew's eye and nodded respectfully. Their relationship had evolved from college acquaintances to co-conspirators, to something approaching friendship during Gregory's treatment. The party flowed around them, children laughing, adults mingling, music playing softly in the background. Yet Andrew found himself momentarily apart from it all, observing the scene with a strange mixture of detachment and belonging. His son was at the center of a circle of friends, animated and healthy. His half-brother was being introduced to Dana's sister, the family connection expanding in real time. Brandon and the medical team were celebrating not just a successful treatment, but a breakthrough that might help other children with similar conditions. And Dana moved through it all with grace and quiet strength. The architect of this moment as surely as Andrew had been the architect of his business empire. Gregory's voice rose above the din as he gathered his friends for the treasure hunt. The first clue is by the old avocado tree in the garden. Mom says it's the only thing that's still here from when the restaurant first opened. Andrew followed the children outside to the restaurant's small courtyard, where the ancient avocado tree stood as it had for decades, a living witness to the history of the place. He watched as Gregory carefully explained to his friends that his grandfather had planted the tree when he first bought the restaurant. "My dad says our family has been connected to this place for 3 generations," Gregory announced proudly. "And now it's got a new heart, just like me." Beside the tree, a small sapling had been recently planted, its tender leaves catching the evening sunlight. A small plaque beside it read, "Gregory's tree. May it grow strong with him. 2025. "That was your idea?" Alan asked, coming to stand beside Andrew. "Dana's actually, a birthday surprise for Gregory." Andrew gestured toward the sapling. "She said something about new beginnings sprouting from old roots." "Wise woman," Alan commented. "You're lucky to have her in your life." "I know," Andrew said simply, though it took me far too long to realize it. As if summoned by their conversation, Dana appeared with a camera, calling for the Hatfield men to gather by the trees for a photo. 3 generations, she directed, positioning Gregory between Andrew and Alan, though not quite in the order nature intended. Gregory giggled as he stood between his father and newfound uncle, his smile brighter than Andrew could ever remember seeing it. "Okay, everyone say Hatfield," Dana called, raising the camera. "Hatfield," they chorused, Gregory's high voice blending with the deeper tones of the men as Dana reviewed the photo. She smiled. "Perfect. The resemblance is undeniable." "It's in the eyebrows," Gregory stated matter-of-factly. "Dad says it's the Hatfield mark." Alan laughed, ruffling Gregory's hair. "Smart kid, gets that from his mother, I'm guessing." "And his grandfather," Andrew added, thinking of his father's letters, the wisdom and regret that had reached across time to change the course of the Hatfield legacy. As the celebration continued into the evening, Andrew found a moment of quiet beside the avocado tree. Breathing in the scent of new leaves and old wood, Dana joined him, handing him a glass of champagne. "To new beginnings," she proposed, echoing the sentiment of the sapling. "And second chances," Andrew replied, completing their toast from Switzerland. Their glasses clinked softly, the sound nearly lost amid the joyful noise of the party. But in that small moment of connection, something settled between them. Not an ending or a beginning, but a continuation, a story still being written, one day at a time, beyond the garden walls. The lights of New York glittered against the darkening sky, a reminder of the world that awaited them beyond this celebration. There would be challenges ahead, Sydney's continued machinations, the integration of Alan into their lives, the ongoing management of Gregory's health, and the complex dance of their evolving family structure. But for now, in this moment, the circle was complete. A family fractured by secrets and silence had found its way back together, healing wounds that spanned generations. And at the center of it all, a boy with his grandfather's eyes and his father's determination stood strong, his once broken heart now beating with renewed strength, proof that even the most damaged things could be mended with time, truth, and love.